The wasteland was dry, endless, and cruel. Dust rolled over broken stones, and the air carried the smell of rust and ash. For years, humans had wandered here, scavenging for scraps, trading what little they had to survive. Among them was a man named Darius, a wanderer with no home, no tribe, and only one thing of value left to his name: an old canteen. It was dented, scratched, and nearly empty. But in the wasteland, even an empty vessel could mean hope. That morning, Darius walked toward a camp of mercenaries. They had captured something rare, something strange. He had heard the rumors days before, whispers of a captive alien girl, sold and traded like an object. Some said she had glowing eyes. Others claimed she was dangerous. But Darius had never seen an alien before, and curiosity pulled him forward. Stronger than fear, the mercenaries laughed when they saw him. "What do you have, wanderer?" One sneered, holding up a weapon made of broken steel. Darius held out his canteen, his only possession. His voice steady but quiet. "I will trade," he said. "The canteen for her." The men stared at him for a moment, then burst into cruel laughter. To trade metal for flesh? To give away a canteen for a burden? They mocked, but one of them shrugged. "Why not? The girl eats too much and speaks too little." And just like that, the trade was made. They pushed the girl forward roughly, her hands bound with rope. Her head lowered. She was small, almost fragile in appearance, but her skin carried a faint shimmer under the sun. Her hair was long, dark, and tangled, her lips sealed in silence. When she looked up at Darius, her eyes glowed faintly, not like fire, but like the quiet reflection of starlight in water. For a moment, he felt something strange move inside his chest, a mixture of fear and pity. He placed the canteen in the mercenaries' hands. They laughed again, waving him away as if they had cheated a fool. But Darius did not care. He untied the girl's hands gently, her skin cold to the touch. "You are free now," he said softly, though he was not sure she understood. The girl only tilted her head slightly, staring at him with unreadable eyes. Then, without a word, she began to walk behind him as he turned. Away from the camp, the wasteland stretched before them, silent except for the crunch of their footsteps. Darius carried his small bag of supplies, but he felt the weight of something larger pressing on him, the weight of a choice. Why had he traded his last possession for her? Why had he risked his survival for a stranger? He told himself it was because no one deserved to be chained, but in his heart, he feared there was more to it, something hidden even from himself. Hours passed beneath the burning sun. He offered her food, a small piece of dried meat, a scrap of stale bread. She shook her head slowly, her lips parting only to whisper something in her language, a word he did not know. Her voice was soft, like the sound of wind sliding across broken glass. Darius frowned but said nothing. Instead, he led her toward a ruined hill where he often camped at night. When the sun finally sank behind the jagged horizon, painting the sky with blood red light, he built a small fire. The girl sat close but not too near, her eyes fixed on the flames, unmoving. Darius watched her carefully, wondering if she was truly weak, or if there was something hidden beneath her silence. The wasteland had taught him one lesson above all: nothing is ever what it seems. As darkness spread, the wind grew colder. He lay near the fire, his hand on his knife, his eyes half closed. Sleep came slowly, filled with uneasy dreams. He dreamed of glowing eyes surrounding him, dozens of them, staring from the shadows. He dreamed of footsteps in the dust, heavy and fast, as if something hunted him in the dark. Darius woke with a start, his breath sharp, his body tense. The fire was low, the night thick around him. The alien girl was still sitting there, her eyes glowing softly as she watched him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke, and in that silence he felt the strange weight again. Not safety, not gratitude, but something far more dangerous. The wasteland whispered with unseen voices, and Darius could not shake the feeling that by giving away an old canteen, He had traded much more than he realized. Perhaps without knowing it, he had traded his very life. Asterisk, the desert stretched far and wide, a sea of broken stone and silent dust. Darius walked ahead, his boots crunching on the ground, while the alien girl followed a few steps behind. The night air was sharp, cold against his skin, yet he could hear only her soft footsteps and the whisper of wind moving over the dunes. She made no sound beyond that, no words, no sighs, only silence. It was the kind of silence that pressed against the mind, filling him with questions he could not escape. When the first light of dawn touched the wasteland, Darius turned to look at her. She was still there, quiet, her eyes lowered, her hands folded against her chest as though she carried a secret close to her heart. He gave her a piece of dry bread, pushing it gently into her palm. "Eat," he said softly. "You need strength." But she only looked at the bread, then at him, and slowly shook her head. Her lips parted to whisper a word in her strange tongue, one soft, broken syllable, and then she pressed the bread back into his hand. It was as if she was refusing, not because she could not eat, but because she would not. The more he watched her, the more uneasy he became. Her movements were not like a prisoner's, not like a weak creature rescued from chains. There was a calmness in the way she walked, a stillness in her gaze, as though she was waiting for something. It made him feel like a man carrying a shadow at his back, never certain when it might overtake him. By midday, the heat pressed down. With burning weight, Darius wiped sweat from his brow, his throat dry. He had traded away his only canteen, and now his water was almost gone. He glanced at the girl. She did not drink. She did not ask. Instead, she walked with the same slow rhythm, her glowing eyes fixed on the horizon as though she knew where they were going. Darius felt a shiver crawl up his spine. "Where do you come from?" he asked, his voice low, but she gave no answer, only a faint smile that held no warmth. That evening, when the sun bled red across the wasteland, Darius made camp again. The girl sat opposite him by the fire, the flames flickering across her pale skin. She still had not eaten, still had not rested, and her eyes reflected the firelight like liquid silver. Darius tried again, speaking carefully. "You are safe now. I will not hurt you." At first, she did not respond. Then slowly she lifted her gaze to meet his. Her voice was soft but sharp, a whisper that cut through the stillness. "You gave away," she said in broken human words. Darius froze. She spoke so rarely that each word felt heavy, like a stone falling into a silent pool. "What do you mean?" he asked carefully, leaning forward, but she said nothing more, only turned her face back toward the fire, her expression unreadable. That night, Darius could not sleep. He lay with his knife close at hand, staring at the girl's figure in the shadows. She did not move, did not close her eyes, only watched him. Her glowing gaze made his skin crawl, yet there was something sorrowful in it too, something that pulled at his heart even as his instincts screamed to run. The wasteland around them was never truly silent. In the distance, the wind carried faint sounds, echoes of movement, low growls, whispers that might have been voices. Darius told himself it was only the wind, only the tricks of an empty land. But the girl finally whispered again, her voice soft, almost broken. "They hear." "US." He sat up, his body tense. "Who hears us?" he asked quickly, but she did not answer. Her eyes shifted toward the darkness beyond the fire, and for the first time since he had taken her, Darius saw fear flash across her face. The flames cracked and hissed, shadows stretching across the ground like long fingers. Darius felt his chest tighten, his heartbeat quick and heavy. He wanted to ask her more, to demand the truth, but his throat was dry, his courage small against the weight of her silence. He realized then that perhaps he had not saved her at all. Perhaps he had only carried her from one cage into another, his own, or worse. Perhaps she had allowed herself to be carried, because she was not running away, but leading him toward something. The night grew deeper, colder, and still she did not sleep. Darius turned away from her glowing eyes. pressing his face into the crook of his arm. But even as he closed his eyes, he knew the truth he dared not speak aloud. The alien girl was no helpless captive. She was something else, a silent stranger walking behind him, waiting, and whatever she waited for was drawing closer with every hour. The night grew heavy around them, pressing like a weight on the air. The small fire Darius had built flickered and cracked, throwing long shadows that danced against the ruins nearby. He sat close to the flames, his hands stretched toward the heat, but his eyes never left the alien girl. She sat on the far side, silent, unmoving, her body wrapped in stillness, her glowing eyes fixed not on him, but on the fire itself. It was as if she was staring into something hidden within the flames, something he could not see. Darius shifted uneasily, his mind racing. He had traded his canteen for her, the last of his possessions, and already he was beginning to wonder if he had made a mistake. She had not thanked him, had not eaten his food, had not even asked for water. Instead, she followed him with the quiet of a shadow, speaking only a few broken words that left more questions than answers. Now, in the glow of the fire, he felt like prey under her gaze, even though she barely moved. The wasteland was never kind at night. Wind whistled through the broken rocks, carrying sounds that could be mistaken for whispers or footsteps. Darius had learned to ignore them long ago, but tonight it was harder. Perhaps it was her presence, or perhaps it was the dream that lingered in his head. A dream of glowing eyes circling him, countless in number, waiting in the dark. He rubbed his face with rough hands, trying to shake the thought away. The girl shifted slightly, her head tilting, and for the first time she spoke without him asking. "They watch," she whispered, her voice soft and strange. Darius froze, his hand tightening around the knife resting on his lap. "Who?" he asked sharply, but she did not answer. Her gaze lifted from the fire to the shadows just beyond the reach of the light. Her eyes glowed brighter there, like silver mirrors catching a secret he could not see. Darius stood, scanning the dark. The night stretched endless and black, the ruins jagged and broken like the bones of some dead giant. He saw nothing, heard nothing but the hiss of the fire. Still, the girl's words clung to his chest like chains. "They watch," she had said, and she had not spoken in error. He sat again, restless, his eyes darting from shadow to shadow. The fire snapped, sending sparks into the air. The girl did not move, did not blink, only stared. It was then that Darius realized she had not once shown fear. Not when the mercenaries had pushed her into his hands, not when the wasteland stretched before them, not even now when she claimed something was watching. Instead, it was he who felt fear, he whose heartbeat grew louder with every passing moment. Hours crawled by, the fire burned low, the shadows grew longer, reaching like claws toward the center of their camp. Darius tried to speak, tried to ask her again what she meant, but each time he opened his mouth, the words dried in his throat. It was as if the silence between them had grown heavier than the desert itself. Finally, his exhaustion caught up with him. He leaned against the stones, his knife still in his grip. His eyes heavy. Sleep came, but it did not come peacefully. He dreamed of firelight flickering against walls that were not stone but flesh. He dreamed of footsteps circling closer, slow and patient, never rushing. And he dreamed of her, the alien girl, standing above him. Her glowing eyes no longer soft, but sharp, cold, predatory. In the dream, she leaned close and whispered, "Pray." And then the sound of countless voices echoed the same word. Surrounding him, he woke with a gasp, his knife raised, sweat cold against his skin. The fire was nearly out, reduced to glowing embers. The girl was still there, seated in the same position as before, but now her eyes were brighter than the fire itself, shining in the darkness like two small moons. She did not speak, did not move, only watched him, and Darius, with his knife trembling in his hand, could not decide if he was her protector or her prize. For the first time since he had taken her, he felt the full weight of the truth pressing down. This was no trait of mercy, no rescue of a victim. This was a bargain he did not understand, and he had given away more than a canteen. He had given himself, and as the fire died completely, leaving them in near darkness, he understood one thing with clarity that shook him to his core. The campfire shadows were not empty. Something was out there, and it was waiting for him. The wasteland night stretched on, heavy and endless. The campfire had burned down to glowing embers, casting only a faint red light across the stones. Darius sat awake, his knife clutched in his hand, his breath uneven. Across from him, the alien girl still sat in silence, her glowing eyes unblinking, reflecting the last sparks of fire. She looked calm, almost too calm, and in that stillness he felt something hidden, something dangerous. The wind carried a low sound. At first it was faint, like the soft scrape of stone against stone, but slowly it grew clearer, heavier, like footsteps dragging across the dust. Darius froze, every muscle in his body tensing. His eyes darted toward the shadows, but the darkness was thick, refusing to reveal its secrets. "Did you hear that?" he whispered, though he already knew she had. The girl tilted her head slightly, then spoke in her broken human tongue. "They come." The words struck him harder than the sound itself. "They come," she had said. Not something is out there. Not perhaps danger, but a certainty. Darius's grip on his knife tightened, until his knuckles turned white. "Who comes?" he demanded, his voice low but sharp. The girl did not answer with words. Instead, her eyes shifted toward the dark horizon, and for the first time since he had met her, he saw her lips curve into something between a smile and a warning. The sounds grew closer, not one set of steps, but many, circling, spreading across the wasteland around them, soft at first, then heavier, deliberate. Darius rose slowly to his feet, his heart hammering in his chest. He had lived long in the wasteland, fought bandits, escaped predators, survived storms, but this sound was different. This was not the chaos of beasts or the greed of men. This was patience, coordination, like hunters moving in unison. He turned to the girl, his voice almost desperate now. "Are they after you?" he asked. Her glowing eyes met his, and her voice was soft but steady. "No," she whispered. "After you." The words sent a chill through him. He stepped back, his mind spinning. Why him? Why not her? Had he not freed her from her chains? Had he not given away his last possession for her? But her calm gaze told him the truth. The trade had not been salvation. It had been something else entirely. He had not rescued her. He had delivered himself. The shadows moved at the edge of sight, tall figures shifting between ruined stones. Their eyes shone faintly, like distant stars, dozens of them, surrounding the camp in silence. The fire was almost gone, the light too weak to push back the night. Darius's throat tightened as he realized his dream had not been just a dream. The glowing eyes from his sleep were real, and they were here, now watching him from the dark. He raised his knife, though it felt small and useless in his hand. The girl stood at last, rising with slow grace, her posture no longer that of a prisoner, but of someone at ease. She stepped toward him, her glowing eyes catching the dim red light of the dying fire. "Canteen." "For me," she said softly, each word broken but clear. Her voice was not thankful, not kind, but final. "You are prey." Darius's breath caught in his chest. The sound of movement grew louder. The hunters closing in, their shapes clearer now, tall and lean, their bodies curved like shadows given flesh. Their glowing eyes fixed only on him. They carried no chains, no nets, no weapons he could see, for they did not need them. He understood then. This was not about capture. This was about the hunt. He staggered back, knife trembling in his grip. The girl watched him with calm detachment, neither helping nor stopping him. She was part of this, he realized, part of them. Not a victim, but a lure, a signal. The canteen had not been the trade. It had been the mark. The moment he gave it away, he had offered himself. The hunters drew closer, their footsteps steady, deliberate. The night filled with the sound of low growls, whispers that seemed to crawl across his skin. Darius's heart thundered, his body screaming to run, but he knew the wasteland offered no escape. Still, instinct drove him. He turned, scanning for any path into the ruins, but wherever he looked, eyes glowed back at him. Unblinking, patient, waiting for him to move, the girl stepped closer, her whisper cutting through the dark like a blade. "Run," she said, her voice neither cruel nor kind, only inevitable. And as the first of the hunters stepped into the faint glow of the dying fire, tall and inhuman with eyes like silver fire, Darius understood the truth. The hunt had already begun. The night was alive now, not with peace, but with movement. Shadows shifted just beyond the ruins, circling the small camp like wolves around wounded prey. The glowing eyes came closer, flickering in and out of the darkness, their numbers growing. Darius gripped his knife so tightly his hand ached, sweat running down his face though the night air was cold. The alien girl stood still, her calm face lit by the faint red glow of the dying fire. She did not flinch, did not tremble, only watched. As the hunters closed in, her silence was worse than any scream. It told him she belonged to them. That this moment was not chaos, but ritual. She whispered again, soft and broken. "Pray," as though the word itself sealed his fate. A low growl echoed from the dark, answered by another, then another. The hunters stepped into sight at last. Tall shapes with lean, alien bodies. Their skin was dark, blending with the night, but their eyes burned with silver fire. They carried no torches, no weapons of humankind, only claws, spears made of bone, and an aura of hunger that pressed against Darius's chest like a stone. They spread out slowly, moving with patience, their circle closing. Darius turned, searching for escape, but every path was cut off by glowing eyes. The ruins offered no safety, only dead stone and broken walls. He swallowed hard, his breath ragged, his heart beating so fast it hurt. One of the hunters stepped closer, tall and silent, its eyes locked on him. It tilted its head the same way the girl had done earlier. And Darius understood. They were the same of one kind. The girl had never been his rescue, never his burden. She had been the bait, the signal to bring the pack. "Why?" he shouted, his voice cracking. "Why me?" The hunters did not answer, but the girl stepped forward, her voice soft but steady. "You gave away," she said, her words slow, as though chosen carefully. "Trade." Sealed. Darius felt the weight of those words crush him. He had not traded for her freedom. He had traded himself into their hunt. The hunters moved closer, their steps slow, deliberate. They were not rushing him, not eager. No, they wanted the chase. They wanted him to run, to fight, to struggle, because that was the way of hunters. It was not enough to kill. The prey must be tested, pushed, broken. Darius's instincts screamed at him to flee, every muscle in his body tensed, every breath sharpened, and then, without thinking, he turned and ran. The ruins exploded with sound as the hunters followed. Their footsteps were not rushed, but powerful, confident, each one a reminder that they were faster, stronger, and that this hunt was already theirs. Darius leapt over broken stones, his knife still in his hand. His lungs burned as he pushed himself forward, weaving between collapsed walls and jagged rocks. The sound of claws scraped behind him, the growls rising like thunder. But worse than the noise was the silence of the girl. He glanced back once. She did not chase. She did not move. She only stood by the fire's dying glow, watching. Her glowing eyes followed him, as though she already knew how the hunt would end. The night became a blur of movement. Darius stumbled over rubble, caught himself, kept running. His chest heaved, his breath ragged, his heart desperate. But the hunters never fell behind, their glowing eyes always appearing in the corner of his vision, sometimes to his left, sometimes to his right, sometimes far ahead, as if they were not chasing, but guiding him deeper into their chosen ground. He realized then the most terrifying truth of all. He was not escaping. He was being herded, driven where they wanted him to go, like an animal pushed into a trap. The wind howled across the wasteland. The ruins seemed endless, twisting into darker paths. And always behind him, the sound of the hunters, never tired, never slowing. Darius pushed forward until his body screamed, but he knew the truth in his heart. He could not outrun them, not in their land, not in their night. At last he stumbled into a wider space, a circle of broken stone pillars standing like ancient guardians of some forgotten place. The ground was smoother here, marked with scratches, stains, and symbols carved deep into the rock. It was no accident. This was their place. Their arena. He had been brought here, carried not by chains, but by fear and desperation. The hunters stepped from the shadows one by one, surrounding him again. Their eyes glowed brighter now, their growls rising into a rhythm, almost like a chant. Darius stood in the center, knife trembling in his hand, his chest heaving. He knew there was no escape, no mercy. The hunt had led him here, and now it would end here. The alien girl appeared at the edge of the circle, her calm face untouched by the chase. She stepped closer, her voice cutting through the growls. "Pray," she whispered again, final and absolute. And as the hunters began to move, their bodies closing in, Darius felt the crushing weight of the truth. The hunt had only just begun. Asterisk, the circle of stone pillars loomed around Darius like the ribs of some ancient beast. The hunters stood at the edges, their glowing eyes fixed on him, their bodies tall and lean, silent and patient. They did not rush forward, did not strike. Instead, they waited, their slow growls rumbling together like a song of hunger. The air was heavy, filled with dust and dread, and Darius felt like the ground itself was holding him in place. His knife shook in his hand, the blade dull compared to the bone spears they carried. He tried to steady his breath, but every inhale felt like fire in his chest. He knew he could not run. He had already been herded here, driven like an animal into their chosen ground. Now he stood in their arena, and the rules of the hunt belonged to them, not to him. The alien girl stepped forward slowly, her bare feet silent on the cracked earth. She moved with calm grace, her glowing eyes softer than the hunters, yet no less cold. She stopped a few steps from him, her voice low and broken. "You gave away, and so they take," she whispered, her words cut deeper than any blade. Darius wanted to scream, to deny it, to tell her he had tried to save her. But the truth burned in his mind. The trade had never been for her freedom, it had been for his fate. He swallowed hard, forcing his voice out. "Why me? Why not them? Why not anyone else?" The girl tilted her head, her expression unreadable. Her voice was soft, almost sorrowful. "Prey is chosen," she said simply. No explanation, no mercy, only a fact as cold as the night itself. The hunters moved closer, closing the circle. Their eyes glowed brighter, their claws scraped against stone, their growls rising into a rhythm that felt like a heartbeat. Darius's fear twisted into something else, anger, raw and desperate. If they wanted him to run, he would not. If they wanted him to be weak, he would not. He raised his knife higher, his voice hoarse but strong. "Then I will fight," he growled, his legs shaking but his spirit refusing to bow. The girl's eyes narrowed slightly, and for the first time she looked almost curious. Perhaps she had expected him to collapse, to beg, to surrender. But instead he stood, trembling yet defiant, her lips curved into the faintest smile, not of kindness, but of interest. She whispered, "Choice." In dark, the hunters stopped, their circle tightening but not yet striking. It was as if they were waiting, giving him this moment. Darius realized then, the hunt was more than killing. It was a test, a ritual, and his choice mattered. To flee and die as prey, or to stand and fight. To prove himself even as the odds crushed him. The silence stretched long. The girl's eyes gleamed in the faint light. Finally, she stepped back into the shadows, leaving him alone in the center of the circle. Her voice drifted through the air, soft as wind across stone. "Run. Or fight. It ends the same." Darius's chest tightened, his heart pounding like a drum. He could feel the hunter's eyes on him, dozens of them, burning into his skin. The night pressed closer, the air heavy with dust and the stench of predators. He gritted his teeth, his mind screaming at him to flee, his body trembling with fear, but his spirit, the stubborn spark of humanity that had carried him through years of wasteland survival, refused to break. He raised his knife high, planting his feet against the stone. His voice rang out into the night, raw and fierce. "Then come. I will not run." The hunters growled louder, their rhythm breaking into chaos, their bodies shifting forward. The ground seemed to tremble beneath their steps, the circle tightening, and Darius knew the choice had been made. The hunt was no longer about escape, no longer about fear. It was about defiance, about standing in the face of the inevitable. If he was to die, he would die fighting, not fleeing. The alien girl's eyes glowed brighter from the edge of the circle. For the first time, her lips formed words not in broken human speech but in her own language. Her voice was strong, carrying into the night, answered by the growls of her kind. It was a call, a declaration, and in that moment, Darius understood. The hunt was no longer just for them. It was for her, too, a ritual that marked not only his fate, but hers. The hunters closed in, their claws glinting, their eyes burning like silver fire. Darius braced himself, knife steady in his hand, his body trembling but his will unbroken. The night swallowed the last ember of fire, leaving only darkness, glowing eyes, and the sound of growls. The choice had been made, and the hunt was about to end. The circle closed, and the night became a cage of glowing eyes. The hunters stepped forward in unison, their movements slow and deliberate, their growls rising like a chant. Darius stood in the center, knife clutched tightly, his chest rising and falling with ragged breaths. The ground beneath his boots felt unsteady, as though even the wasteland itself wanted to swallow him whole. The alien girl watched from the edge of the circle, her calm face lit by the glow of her kind silver eyes. She looked neither cruel nor merciful, only distant, like a witness to something older than words. Her voice drifted once more, soft and final. "Pray," she whispered, sealing his fate with a single word. One of the hunters lunged forward, its clawed hand sweeping toward him. Darius dodged, barely, the movement clumsy but desperate. He slashed with his knife, the blade scraping across alien skin, leaving a shallow cut. The creature hissed, stepping back, and the others growled louder, their rhythm breaking, their hunger rising. Darius's chest heaved, his arms shaking, but for the first time he had drawn blood. It did not matter that it was small, that it was nothing compared to their strength. For a moment, he felt like more than prey. He roared, charging at the nearest figure, his knife flashing in the faint light. He struck again, the blade cutting deeper this time, the hunter staggering back with a guttural snarl. The others surged forward in answer, circling closer, their glowing eyes burning brighter. The fight became chaos. Darius swung wildly, each strike fueled by fear and rage. Claws scraped his arm, blood spilled down his side. Pain burned hot through his body, but still he fought, refusing to collapse, refusing to run. Every cut he made was small, every strike weak compared to their power, yet he kept moving, kept resisting, his defiance echoing louder than his cries. The hunters did not kill him quickly. They circled, struck, pulled back, testing him, tearing him slowly. This was not slaughter, it was ritual, a trial, a game of predator and prey. And he was caught in the center of it. But though his body weakened, though his blood stained the stones, his spirit did not bow. At the edge, the alien girl's eyes glowed brighter, her lips moving as if speaking words in her own tongue. The hunters answered her voice with growls, their rhythm rising and falling like a song. Darius realized then she was not only bait, she was part of the ritual itself. She had called them, guided them, and now she gave voice to their hunt. And yet, when her eyes flicked to him, he thought he saw something else there. Not cruelty, not pity, but recognition. as if his choice to stand and fight had changed something she had not expected. His legs weakened, his arms heavy. The knife felt like stone in his hand, slippery. With his own blood, one of the hunters slashed across his chest, throwing him back against the stones. He fell to his knees, gasping, his vision blurred. Around him the growls rose louder, the silver eyes closing in. This was the end, and yet, even on his knees, Darius forced himself to lift the knife again. If he was to die, he would die standing. The girl's voice cut through the growls, sharp now, commanding. Her words were not in human tongue, but they carried weight. The hunters froze for a heartbeat, their glowing eyes fixed on her. Darius staggered to his feet, confused. Why had they stopped? Why had her voice silenced them? The girl stepped forward into the circle, her glowing eyes brighter than all the others. She looked at him, her voice softer now. Pray. That fights, she said slowly, her broken human words filled with meaning. The hunters growled again. Restless, but none moved, she stood between them and him, her gaze sharp. It was as if his defiance had shifted something in their ritual, as if the prey had become more than prey. But Darius did not know if this meant survival or only a slower end. His vision dimmed, his body swayed. The girl's voice rose again, in her language, her tone sharp like steel. The hunters answered, their growls fading into silence. One by one, they stepped back into the shadows, their glowing eyes retreating until the night swallowed them whole. Darius collapsed, his knees hitting the stone, his knife falling from his hand. His chest heaved, his wounds burned, but he was alive. The girl knelt beside him, her face close, her glowing eyes studying him. You are prey, she whispered. Again, but her voice carried something new, not finality but choice. Prey. Or hunter. His vision darkened, the world fading. The last thing he saw was her silver eyes above him, bright and endless. And the last thing he heard was the whisper of the night, the voice of the hunt itself. The story was not finished. It had only changed. The wasteland was silent again. But Darius knew silence did not mean safety. The night belonged to the hunters, and now, perhaps it belonged to him as well.